Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of BTC Unlocked. I'm Jason Hagholm. I'm your host, and today my guest is one of the staples of BTC Fight Promotion and really a mainstay here in the Canadian mixed martial arts regional scene, Adam Maverick Assenza. Adam, how are you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, pleasure to have you, Adam. I mean, you've had a long and storied career. Let's just get into it. Like, your background, I think, is interesting. You come from a gymnastic background. Like, what got you into mixed martial arts to begin with?
Honestly, it was a combination of just like loving kung fu movies and stuff like that when I was a kid. And, when I was a gymnast, when I was younger, I used to get picked on a lot. And, I ended up getting into a lot of fights, like, when I was in, grade school, high school, so on and so forth. And I remember when I quit being a gymnast, like I was training, 16 hours a week. Like I started off as artistic, which is like all 6 events or whatever. And then I moved to like power tumbling. And it's like, I remember quitting that and like just being like, what do I do now? Mm-hmm. And then obviously like, MMA was getting big, the UFC was getting big. And my friend brought me to a gym. And it was like a sparring day, and I didn't do any sparring or anything like that. And like I think maybe the first day I sparred like Sam Stout or something like that, right? So
Wow.
and one of the guys was like, hey man, like, you got pretty good wrestling. I never wrestled before. I never did anything. I was just athletic, and I think that kind of once I did that, I was hooked. Like I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing now. I got to figure out like how to train this, 16 hours a week or get good at this, and that's kind of how it happened.
Did you ever I guess more about the gymnastics side of things. Did you think that was going to be your athletic path, like go to compete in the Olympics or something like that? Adam?
Yeah, I definitely wanted to compete in the Olympics. I think like if you're doing a sport like that, mm-hmm. you want to try to go to the Olympics, and that's always the goal. I think when you start it, and then it's super hard to do, and once you do that for a few years, and you get up there, and it's kind of like. It's hard to say. Like, there's so many different paths from that sport that it's super hard to get to the Olympics. So, I just kind of was burnt out towards the end of it, and I just fell into fighting and MMA.
Well, now when you look back, like, especially, like, your first time where you're, like, sparring, like, Sam Stout, like, they kind of blow you away. Like, that was your first experience?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even know what I was doing at the gym at that time. Like, I was in school. My buddy's like, oh, come to the MMA gym, and whatnot. And I went over there, and, I was away at college, and it was like a sparring night. And I think he just had a fight, and he was just kind of home hanging out and just kind of getting some rounds in. And next thing you know, I'm sparring Sam Stout, and he's in the UFC at the time, right? So it definitely is something that's surreal, and it also like pumped me up too.
How long did you transition from like just that one off at the gym to becoming like starting your amateur journey?
Well, right after that, I moved home, and I started training at a gym in my hometown, and I was training there like as serious as I could have trained there, and essentially like I had buddies that were like still like fighting amateur. Like how that story went was I was away at school, started training MMA. My buddy took an MMA fight. We literally traveled to the States for the MMA fight. We had no idea what we were doing. We were cutting weight in the showers. We didn't know what was going on. We were trying to get the steam to help, sweat everything out. And he ended up fighting in like a tournament, or he would fight like twice that night. We had no experience, So when I came home from that, I started training here. Like I was like, okay, I need to get a fight going. But, there was no amateur MMA here. There was no professional MMA here at the time. Yeah. So I ended up speaking with, now our matchmaker for BTC Fight, but at the time, Woodrow was doing like amateur fights in Michigan. And I remember I came home, and I probably had been training a total of maybe 3 months or something like that at the time, like a little bit away at school. And then when I came back, I started training here. And I took my first amateur MMA fight, and I got 2 other guys that I was training with in Burlington an amateur MMA fight. Okay. And that was through Woody, and that was in Michigan. So like it wasn't legal here. Professional wasn't even legal here, none of that stuff, right? So, I didn't even train in a cage at this point. At this point in time, I had never trained in a cage. I had sparred in a ring and at open mats.
So you just then got those opportunities, and what was your first experience stepping in the cage, knowing like this is your amateur debut, you're in foreign territory, and this is something you're now trying to pursue? Like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was a rush. I mean, first off, like when we got to the amateur fight or whatnot, my first time cutting weight, I used to walk around pretty heavy, and I used to have like a lot of muscle on me from doing gymnastics, and like you're always working out and moving your body weight. So I had to like cut weight the first time, which I didn't know what I was doing. I basically starved myself. And then, you know, we weighed in, we got to the event, and then right when I got to the event, you know, the one of the higher ticket sellers, and like people don't realize this, like, you know, you are able to base your events and run your events off of, you know, making money, right? Yeah. So that goes to like, you know, which athletes are the most popular, who sell the most tickets. So in Michigan, one of their ticket sellers, who was like a co-main event guy, like on the main card, he lost his opponent. So, you know, I'm the next guy in that they could match up. I'm the Canadian because it was Canada versus US. That was the fight event. And, you know, next thing you know, I'm fighting this guy who's like got 9 fights, undefeated, is my first fight. You know, he's like a Division I wrestler from Michigan. So that whole thing was kind of a bust because I was supposed to be the second or third fight on the card. And now I'm like, you know, the 30th fight on the card.
Yeah.
And like it was like a 35 fight card, right? So just dealing with a bunch of different things there. You know, not knowing who I was fighting, then fighting this guy. You know, it's not like you go on the internet and see tape at the time. It wasn't really like, you know, posted on YouTube. So it was just kind of like show up. Okay, I'm fighting this guy. Let's do it.
How much do you think that's helped you throughout your career, Adam? Like just the ups and downs. Like sometimes you get an opponent like weeks notice, now setting up for a fight, and you know you got to fight in the higher end of a card in your like debut, basically. Like how'd that help you? You think?
Yeah, I think it's great. You know, I mean, you want to be like, fighting is so unpredictable, and so many things can happen when you're either getting ready for a fight or on your way to a fight or during a fight, right? Like you kind of want to be put in these situations and just kind of see how you handle them. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, have that experience. So like, you know, down the road when it's a really important fight or maybe a big money fight, you know, you're able to persevere no matter what the situation might be.
So obviously all your amateur experience was down in the States before. There was some amateur here. Now obviously it's gone away. Are you hoping it comes back? Because we keep hearing big things. Hopefully by 2025 we'll see some amateur fights back in Ontario. Yeah,
definitely. We need a feeder system. We need to keep growing the sport. And amateur is the way to do it, you know, like it's a little bit more work to kind of turn professional, and you know you're going to be fighting a lot of skilled guys, and you know sometimes the amateur route's the way to go because somebody could go do an amateur fight and just, you know, train for a few months and see how, you know, if this is really for them.
Do you feel like your amateur experience, which I don't think was that long, but was it just very beneficial for you before you even became a pro, or just getting your feet wet, like if this is what you truly wanted to do?
First off, the issue is it was in Michigan, right? So the only difference between amateur and pro was they were 3-minute rounds and we weren't getting paid.
Yeah.
But it was 4-ounce gloves. There was no shin guards, no headgear, no padding, nothing, right? Yeah. So it was literally the exact same as professional. You just don't get paid for it, right? So I think it was beneficial because obviously, you know, nothing stayed on my record or anything like that. And, you know, I was able to literally just get my feet wet, but I mean, it was the same thing as pro. It wasn't much different.
Right.
Anybody else that I had spoken to at that time, when I had turned professional, they had done amateur fights in you know, Montreal or like other places where it was legal and it was thriving, and you know they had like the 8-ounce gloves. Some of them had, you know, shin guards, headgear, that kind of thing. So for me, it was obviously great, but at the same time, I mean, there was no difference.
Then obviously you transitioned to being a pro. You got a lot of those fights on the Score Fighting series. You know, we talked to Woody, who was like the matchmaker there, Josh Hill, who was one of the faces of the Score Fighting series. What was your experience like fighting for what was, especially here in Ontario when the sport became legalized, like the promotion, having a television distribution deal across the country? Like, what was that like for you, Adam?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, it was official. You know, like I had went from fighting in like, you know, pretty big arenas, but like half sold out. Sometimes they were dead, you know, fighting in bars, you know, 2-story, you know, bars. Like one of the places we fought looked like Def Jam Vendetta, like the video game, awesome. Right? So it was like, you know, just super ghetto spots, some of them at least, to like fighting for a legit organization who had a TV deal, who put, you know, some money into like their production, the athletes, like, you know, tried to make everything as official as possible. I was definitely impressed at the time, and it was a good experience.
And you as well, obviously, you know, one of the things we know with you here at BTC, like you're a huge ticket seller. You had obviously a big fan base early on. Like, talk about like how did you develop that fan base? Is it just from your style, being, you know, a local guy fighting kind of close to home? Is that kind of the key to the success? Because promoters just looking for those next kind of guys where they can, you know, put all their hats and towards that guy just to help sell tickets.
I don't even know how to explain that. Like the thing is like when I was fighting in Michigan, again, like it's a business, right? So if I'm not selling tickets, then like I'm either going to be brought in to like lose, or that's what they would want,
Yeah.
or to get a good spot, or maybe to get like a title fight, I'm gonna have to beat their top guys or what have you. But I remember like fighting in Michigan, and like I would tell a couple of my buddies or something like that, or post it on like Facebook at the time, and next thing I knew, like 2 weeks before the fight, like they're getting a bus load. Their guys are like, getting buses and figuring out, travel. And like next thing you know, I'm fighting in Michigan, and I got like pretty much half of my high school, all of my buddies, at the time that, are hanging around, and like, double that. Like even people I don't know that are coming, that are friends with those people. So like, I feel like I've always sold a ton of tickets no matter where. And like, even like in the beginning, it was like amateur in Michigan, right? Not really like supervisor, or I guess maybe that's the wrong word I'm looking for. I'm looking for sanctioned. I don't know if it was sanctioned or not, right? I think it was legal, but there was really no like sanctioning body there. And like I said, I would sell like 2 busloads would come over. I'd probably sell like 500 to 800 tickets, and the promoters like love me over there because they're like, this guy brings half of Canada with him.
Yeah.
So it's kind of always been like that, and I don't know if there's like a recipe to that. It's just a matter of, I just had people that at the time where MMA wasn't big here. There was no MMA here, and then I was fighting maybe a few hours away, so they wanted to make that trip and support me, which is cool.
Do you think also too is like it seemed like you were marketing yourself too, right? Like I'm fighting here, and then people get behind you. Where it seems like there's some people today that fight on the regional scene. They're like, that's the promoter's job. My job's just to fight.
Right. I mean, in my opinion, the old age saying is, money follows attention, right? So, if I want to be successful, I want to make, have as much attention on me as possible. And the thing is, if you know anything about me, the best fights that I ever have, or the best way for me to fight is when I have everybody paying attention, right? So, like, I don't know if it's me just putting pressure on myself, or how to really, describe that, but I just feel like they kind of go hand in hand, right? If you want to get to where you want to be, if you want to, get in a good position, people have to care. Whether they like you or they hate you, they need to care about you.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is just how do you get people to care? There's so much MMA out there right now at the regional scene. I mean, there's a UFC event on every week. Like, how do you not oversaturate yourself for, like, people just need to market themselves more. And you just don't see a lot of people doing that. They're just putting their faith in the promotion that they will. But if your fight style is not entertaining, or you're not out there on social media marketing yourself, then why should people care? I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's entertainment.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing something that's going to make people watch, putting eyeballs on the screen, or buying tickets to your event, like, nobody's really going to care about you for very long.
Yeah, and too, there's so many tools out there, as we said, your social media. Like, just look at your social media. You're always out there promoting your fight, the event. Not even just your fights, like other people's fights. Like, you're out there trying to get some eyeballs on them, and where a lot of people don't do that. But as you said, it is a business. There's other things going on every night. Especially these cards are on Saturdays. You can go see a movie, go whatever. Like, that's so important. I think people, there's just stuff they need to learn from you and other people about, like, how to market themselves, because you're your biggest seller, right? Like, Conor McGregor didn't rely on the UFC, basically, is what I'm saying. He put a lot on himself to market himself out there. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think you should help the guys that are under you, maybe having their first fights, or maybe their first amateur fights. Bring them up, and like I had guys before me that were kind of doing that same thing. So it's always good to give back and bring each other up all at the same time.
Well, you talk about, you have that exciting style. Like, where'd you base your style of? Because sometimes it's honestly like when you watch you fight, like button mashing playing a video game.
Yeah, the thing is like, I didn't have any formal training, right? I was just like, I was athletic enough to pull off moves, so I would just watch fights and see cool things. Mm-hmm. And then next thing you know, I'd go in the fight, and then I'd like, run across the cage and throw like a flying kick or something. Like, it's just, at the time, like my whole amateur career, I was missing a lot of pieces of like skill, is the best way to put it. Like, formal training, like I had some basic formal training, but like, as my career has progressed, I've had like phenomenal striking coaches that I've worked with for years, and, understood like the ins and outs of striking and how to put it all together with the grappling and the wrestling, and, had great, grappling coaches and wrestling coaches. And it's kind of, everything's kind of come up now, and, I'm a more complete and well-rounded fighter nowadays, obviously. But in the beginning, it was just kind of like learning a few things and just being athletic, and then just wanting to fight and going out there and thinking I was tough. And like, that's literally what drove me back then in the very beginning, right?
I think part of that style too is the appeal of you too. Is like, sure, you're marketing yourself, but you're like this wild guy throwing spinning back kicks and stuff like that you only basically see in those kung fu movies that you watched growing up and stuff of that nature.
Right.
Obviously, then the Canadian scene kind of took a bit of a dip. There was a couple shows here in Ontario, the Global Warriors, but BTC comes into the fold. And then how do you get linked up with BTC, Adam?
I was kind of pushing for it for a long time. Like I was trying to, kind of be in Irene's ear, like, talking to her and just, I always kept saying, we need to have a promotion that's, based in Ontario. We need to have a promotion that's local, like I'll sell this place out. Like, let's do this, just kind of kept putting the bug in their ear. And then, one thing led to another. And obviously like we have like the genius that is Sherry Crothers and, it just, started coming up, right? Like we Sherry and Irene had spoke about doing a show, and then they spoke to me and like, all right, let's do this thing, and then we had our first show.
Talk about memories of the first show. BTC won May 27th, 2017.
Yeah, it was cool. Like a lot of good finishes, a lot of good fights on that card. We did the show, or like they had the show essentially at the MTCC, and it was during like a bodybuilding conference, right? So yeah. I think the thought process was, okay, like, this is an athletic, event, perhaps, we'll bring our own, our own crowd, but then there's going to be tons of like sport enthusiasts and whatnot there. And like, besides the bodybuilding, there's like, CrossFitters, so on and so forth. I don't know if you've ever been to something like that, but basically everything athletics is there, right? People are trying to sell equipment. People are trying to sell, memberships. It is what it's huge, right? Yeah. So we had figured that, that was the place to do it. And, it was a good turnout. We had a lot of good fights for the first fight event that night, and it definitely was an experience for sure.
What do you remember about your fight? You got a first round finish in that fight against Brendan Ward.
Yeah, I mean, he was a late replacement. Like I lost my opponent, so like I think on a week or two notice they got him, and he was preparing for a fight in the States somewhere. So I didn't know much about him. I just saw there was one video that I found of him, and he just like knocked the guy out quick. So I just remember going into the fight being like, okay, no mistakes, make sure I keep my distance, and I want to keep him on the end of my punches and kicks and everything. And yeah, I mean, everything went well. I got poked in the eye, like which typically happens to me, often more than not. And then I ended up clinching him, and I was able to finish him in the clinch. So it was a good fight.
And as well, like, what was the commission status like at that point? Was that around the point Ken Hayashi had stepped away?
Yeah, I think Ken had stepped away and Luke had taken over, or was it Ray? I honestly don't even remember.
So but were the vibes a little bit better with the commission as opposed to the Ken Hayashi era, which we've heard many stories of before?
Yeah, the vibe was they wanted to, help grow the sport, make sure the event, was doing what it needed to do, and anything that the fighters needed. Like it was a good vibe, and it was different from when I was fighting on the score and we were walking on eggshells with Ken Hayashi.
Yeah, so just talk about that a little bit. Like Josh has said the same thing too. Just walking on eggshells when you're fighting in the score. Major, as we said before, major promotion on major network, but like, why were you walking on eggshells so much with Ken Hayashi in charge?
Like, I can't really explain why, but I just know that, like, put it this way. I'll tell you a quick story. So my first pro fight, right? You know that the medicals are crazy in Ontario, right?
Yes.
Like, you're aware, you have an idea that, like, we're jumping through hoops every time we need to get licensed each year. So again, my first pro fight, I've never been licensed in Ontario before as a professional. I got licensed. I had everything. I guess the only thing that my doctor didn't check, or I guess write in the blood work, was the B antigen. So I don't know how, but it got missed because I turned my medicals in, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before the event, but it got missed. So at the weigh-ins, literally they told me, or maybe it was like a day before the weigh-ins. I was pretty close to the weigh-ins where they're like, listen, you have to go get your B antigen done, and like, you don't get this, you don't fight. Ken's like, your fight's done. And I'm like, but I sent everything in weeks ago. Like, what's going on? And basically, I was missing my B antigen. They didn't go through the medicals until like the week of the fight or something like that. And that's what I had to do. So I was cutting weight, went to the weigh-ins, weigh-ins finished, and Ken's like, I need that blood work tomorrow. So I called around. I didn't know how blood work worked then, but obviously, like in Canada, you got to send it to like public health. takes a few good weeks, right?
Yeah.
So ideally, I found out that I had to go to Michigan, back to Michigan, to get my blood work done, right? So I drove, I ended up going to a place in Buffalo that had just opened up. But my first bet was to go to Michigan because I knew that they had a spot you could get it done instantly.
Yeah.
So I drove to Buffalo the day of the fight, got my blood work done, came back, and I literally drove from Buffalo to the venue, handed in my blood work, and Ken Hashi's like, all right, yeah, get warmed up, and I'll let you know if you're fighting.
Wow.
So I mean, like I don't know how to explain like the difficultness of dealing with this man, but that was my first experience dealing with him. And like I gave him the blood work that he wanted, everything was good. B antigen was on there. He had everything else, and he was like, "Yeah, warm up, and I'll decide if you're fighting." So literally, I had to go warm up, and I didn't even know if I was gonna fight. And I was the first fight of the night. They had lost a bunch of fights on the card. There was like, I think 6 or 7 fights on the card. So like I was basically warm up, and I would be walking. I was the first fight of the night. So before they started the show, I had no idea if I was even gonna fight.
Yeah, I can see why that would be annoying to deal with, where you're driving across the border to multiple states trying to do this one little hoop for this guy, and he doesn't seem to like care or just keep putting your future in the palm of his hands, which is unfortunate. But obviously, like, what have you noticed, Adam, about the changes in the commission and them wanting to grow the sport with Luke at the helm?
Yeah, with Luke at the helm, it's been awesome. Like they're extremely professional. You know, they're trying to help the athletes as much as possible, and it's just way different than in the beginning, right?
Well, you don't have to worry about going to multiple states and then maybe you'll fight. I don't know, things of that nature.
Exactly.
Talk about BTC 3, because that was the first BTC event here in Burlington, and you know you picked up the lightweight title that night, the first champion too at that division.
Yeah, no, it was great. The place was packed. You know, like all of Burlington, the surrounding areas, they were all there, and I don't even know how to explain it. It was just a surreal night, and it was a hell of an event. And yeah, we sold the place out, and it's just history. It's one thing that I'll never forget.
I always remember that was my first event there, and I remember just the finish and just how loud the crowd was. It was like a perfect finish for you too, Adam.
Yeah, it was perfect. It was one of those things that, you know, me and my coach at the time, Moses Molnawaz, we had been working on some setups for some shots to land, and we set it up the first half of the round, and then, you know, as we got through the middle of the round, you know, everything was landing clean just like we had worked on. So it was a good night.
And then obviously, you know, you get to fight a UFC vet, Jason Saggo, at the next event. Things don't go your way, but like they say, like a loss is your biggest like learning experience. You know, it's not really a loss; it's a learning experience. What'd you learn when you fought a UFC vet like Jason Saggo?
Yeah, at that point in time, I still wasn't complete. Like I was, you know, I had wrestling, I had some jiu-jitsu, but I still was just relying mostly on, you know, my striking and just my athleticism, right? Like a lot of other guys, they, you know, weren't able to, you know, hold me down as well as he did. And, you know, he's a high level, you know, black belt, and just the way that he maneuvered himself, you know, he was able to slow my game down. And, you know, there was just some things that I needed to learn at that time and some holes that I had that I didn't think that I had. So it was good to kind of have that fight. And then, you know, since then I've fixed those holes and I've done very well in those positions.
Would you say that's the fight that kind of made you more like adapt to be more of a mixed martial artist, even though you'd been in the game for a while? Because you said you're more relying on your athleticism, and that can only get you so far.
Right. Absolutely. I think that opened up my eyes on, you know, having different styles and just kind of how to approach the MMA game, right? Like, I mean, if you approach somebody and fight them with a specific style and then switch in between, it kind of throws guys off, right? Like they're, you know, if they're used to you pressuring them forward, and then all of a sudden you're on the outside, and then all of a sudden you're going for takedowns, and you're mixing it up the way MMA is meant to be played, you know, it's a lot harder for them to deal with you, right? And so, I mean, I felt like that was kind of like an eye-opener for me, because up until that point, I had just been using what I'd always used and what had worked for me.
And then, you know, you win one, you lose one, both in Burlington and then in Ottawa. And then you, like, went on this tear, Adam, like, from just before the pandemic, you know, the Hamilton Ashwood, the Cody Pfister win, which was just a weird fight in general with Pfister throwing his stool out of the cage. Yeah. And then the pandemic hits, but you stay active. You go fight in the States, and you beat some real top names like Sean Fallon and Chance Beck. Like, talk about that experience where you still were keeping your dream alive, where a lot of people's careers were on pause because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the type of guy where I need to keep it moving. You know what I mean? So during that time, there was an offer to go fight in the States, and I wanted to fight for, I think at the time was the Strike Hard belt.
Yeah.
And it was all under like the HR and B2 banner. Like it was kind of, so basically it's like 3 promotions, but they all work together. They're on the same, they were on the same like pay-per-view or however you want to.
I think they're on the same streaming service.
That's what it was, right?
Yeah.
So I was supposed to fight him for his title in that organization, and then like I get there the week of, and they change the weight. It's a non-title fight. It's 3 rounds, and essentially, that's just another few obstacles to overcome. And then after that, finally I got a crack at their lightweight champion for that B2 title, and that was an experience in itself as well.
We'll talk about that. I believe those fights were in Kentucky.
Yeah, so Tennessee and the Kentucky, yeah.
Yeah, so like what's it like fighting, there where you've had some amateur fights in the States and Michigan, but Kentucky's like a different animal, different commission, different style of commission, plus during a pandemic where I don't think those states took it as serious as obviously we took it up here in Ontario.
No, yeah, it was definitely odd compared to, being up here in Canada, and then when you're going out there and like there's no masks, guys are just drinking, being super rowdy, and like, it was a good time. I enjoyed it.
You had a fun time out there. Okay. Yeah. But and you're brought in there kind of to get beat up by the hometown American guy, and then you go out there and you stop Chance Beth in the 5th round. Like, that's got to be one of the biggest wins of your career and biggest moments too.
Yeah, it worked out well.
Definitely worked out well. Yeah. I mean, and then obviously after that fight, you just had like such bad luck from having such a great run to bad luck, like 3 straight fights falling out. Adam, like, what kept you're motivated? Obviously, you're passionate and this is what you want your life to be, but like that has to be so hard, including like losing one fight like at the weigh-in, basically.
Yeah, it was actually 3 fights at the weigh-in.
3 fights, yes.
Yeah, in a row. But I mean, at the end of the day, like that's life. You're gonna have some tough spots, and things are gonna happen. Like weird things are gonna happen. Like so at the end of the day, like even though each fight was frustrating, I trained for the fight. We'd weigh in. And then, like for the one guy, at the weigh-ins, he didn't make it in because some medical issue happened. Another guy weighed in, and then the commission canceled it because of another medical thing.
Yeah.
Like, just because those things have happened, like at the end of the day, you typically just need to keep pushing through. That's the way that I see it, right?
Well, obviously that worked out because the next fight you had was the Polo Reyes fight, which is just like one of the craziest fights. To me, still the best fight to ever happen in BTC. Talk about that first round where, you're looking good, you've hurt him, but then he comes back and hurts you, and then you throw this awesome hook right off the fence that rocks Polo, and it was like you had that shining moment in the fight where you were able to take it back and kind of reverse your fortunes from the LFA fight where like you're pushing back and then you're hurting someone with that experience too that like Polo had fighting in the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, like leading up to that fight, I felt so sharp. Everything was working good. And the first round was going exactly how I expected it to. But MMA, it's one of the most unpredictable sports, in my opinion, out there. And like I said, like I thought I circled, I was far enough away, but I wasn't. He landed on his hook. And then at that point in time, it's a fight or flight type of thing. So he landed a hook, I got hurt. And then after that, I'm like, let's just scrap. And that's literally what it was. It was like me just straight up fighting. And that's typically when I put on my best fights.
You could tell, like it was just literally like an old school, like in the back school behind a school, like just 2 guys biting down their mouthpiece and throwing punches. And like, how proud are you of that fight? I guess is what I'm trying to get at, Adam, because like you've had a lot of fights up to that point. Is that the one you're the most proud of?
I don't think I'm proud of that fight at all, to be honest.
Okay.
With you. I mean, for me, like I like going in there, and I obviously like being exciting. But I also like, showing that I can be a surgeon and take my guys out, specifically, intelligently, and I like I don't know how to explain it. Like I work so hard in this sport that I definitely want to be seen as somebody that methodically could take somebody out, right? But sometimes shit happens in MMA. Yeah. So, you get hurt, you get hit, you don't see the shot, and then we just go from there. And then the backup is basically stand in the middle of the cage, stoic as can be, and just throw, right?
Is there a performance that you're the most proud of in your career?
There's a few of them. Yeah, I think BTC 3, because it went specifically how I had planned it to go, and I can't really talk about too many of them, because for me, it's like when one fight has happened and it's done, it's on to the next.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about past fights or what were my favorites and what weren't. Like, at the end of the day, my favorite fight's supposed to be my next fight. The next fight I'm going to have, that's going to be my favorite fight, because I'm going to work hard and do what I want to do in the fight and try to have a great performance.
Well, let's talk about your last fight, which was such a bizarre fight back at BTC 24, where your opponent comes in, misses weight, you still take the fight. Obviously, you still want to go out there and put on a show in your hometown. It's not going away for the first 2 rounds, but there's some dirty tactics in there. Have you ever fought someone like that before?
I mean, there's guys that do dirty things in fights, but that was brutal.
Your shorts nearly came off in the second round.
Yeah, it's just super weird. Like most people don't know, but I had a couple injuries in there way before the fight that I probably shouldn't have been fighting. But at the end of the day, it's the hometown show. I don't want to let everybody down, and at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I'm showing up and showing out, like, just for my people and for all the people that enjoy MMA and like coming to the fights and watching me fight and buy tickets. So a lot of those positions that I was in, I don't feel as though I would have been able to be in those positions if I was functioning at 100%. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's why I love testing myself. To me, it was a great test, and in the third round, I came back, tenfold. So we turned that around, and I felt like I won the fight with that.
Your third round, obviously very impressive, 10-8 across the board, which made the fight be the draw. Have you ever seen someone just kind of sit there and let them tee off on you like that? Because that was bizarre in their own fight from his perspective. He's winning the fight 2 rounds.
Well, the thing is I was hitting him with some big shots, and he was looking up at the ref at the beginning to try to get stood up. And then after that, I wasn't really letting him stand up, right?
Yeah.
I was covering his back and just throwing elbows and punches as much as possible, because I wanted to try to finish the fight. In that fight, definitely he gave him the first round for sure, by far. The second round, I felt as though I took it. I felt like he took the first part of it, and then when I was standing for the second half of it, I felt like I did some damage. And then I think I ended up on my back again towards the end. I can't remember. And then the third round, I felt like it was like a 10-8 or 10-7 even. He didn't do anything, but eat shots.
It was definitely a dominant round for you, regardless. I mean, it became a draw, but it's one that I think if anyone looking back, Thiago would have to look back and be like, he let that one slip away.
Absolutely.
He was gonna win that fight. But when you're in a fight like that too, where someone's doing those underhanded tactics and kind of getting into your head a little bit, how do you overcome that, Adam?
Yeah, that stuff doesn't get into my head, right? At the end of the day, I just was trying to be as smart as possible. The guy was 2 weight classes bigger than me. He probably outweighed me by 30 pounds easily. He's a big dude, so I was just staying calm, staying busy on the bottom as much as I could. And, I wasn't able to stand up like I normally would, right? So I had to be a little strategic on how I did that. So, just remaining calm is the best way to get through anything. So that's all I did.
Well, you did. You picked up a draw there, so you still haven't been beaten since 2022. So that's a positive for you going forward. What's next for you, Adam? What are you looking for to say the next big fight for you is the next one? When can we expect to see you back? What do you have planned in the works?
I'm hoping for something in the fall. I'm looking at a bigger major promotion, and there's a couple things going on right now, so not really much I can say, but expect me back hopefully in the fall or just a little bit after that.
Nice. You feel like you've got those injuries that you had sorted out going into your last fight at BTC 24 kind of taken care of too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Well, that's exciting because, I feel like if anyone deserves a major promotion or a major step up and some fun opportunities, it would be you. Are you what are you looking forward to the most? Just the exposure, something different?
Yeah, I'm just looking for another challenge, another big challenge, something that gets me excited, gets me up in the morning,
Yeah.
And I I train all the time. I'm always in shape. This is just my lifestyle. I've always been like this since I was probably a little kid. So it's no different for me, but, looking for another great challenge and to see what comes my way.
You also, on the side, you do some modeling too on the side. You think, like, how did you get into that world too, Adam? It's kind of a total opposite of a job where you get punched in the face, where the other job gets to show off your face.
Yeah, it's hard to even explain that. Like, it was one of those things where, growing up, I had a couple of friends that were like pretty big models, and, opportunities came where I had done some modeling through them.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I just had some agents and stuff that had reached out here and there. And I work really close with a couple of, my managers and people that I work close with, and things come up. And it's just one of those things that when something is available and if it makes sense, I'll do it. But first and foremost, I'm a fighter.
Yeah. How busy would you say are when you go on to shoots and stuff like that? Like, how much out of your day, out of your time does that take?
It depends on the type of shoot, right? Like, realistically, like if you're going for like a clothing shoot or something like that, that could be like a full day,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's more of like a movie or something like that, that could be like 2 weeks. You could shoot through the night all night for 2 weeks, and your part's done, and then you're finished that job.
What movies have you shot for, Adam?
I can't say.
Oh, can't say?
Yeah.
Real? Okay.
There's been a couple recently that I've done,
okay.
so I can't talk about them until.
Yeah, I get that. I was just wondering if there's anything in the past that people could look up, but if it's pretty recent, then I guess we're still waiting for it to come out. And
yeah, absolutely.
You know how all that stuff works. So yeah, so you got a big rest of the year and a big 2025 then planned, I guess, Adam.
That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah. Well, Adam, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. Obviously, you're one of the most exciting fighters, and really the face. Like, I guess the last thing, what does it mean you kind of be the face of this promotion, where it was kind of you championing it, and now you've got to headline it multiple times. You have the most wins in the promotion, 2-time lightweight champion. Like, what does it mean for you, for a guy that kind of grew up in this area?
It's an honor.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, just to be a part of BTC Fight and be able to compete often in my home area and not have to always go to the States or
Mm-hmm.
fly different areas, and maybe at the time, like before these promotions were popping up in this area, fights were few and far apart.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's an honor, and I'm lucky, I'm blessed.
Well, we're looking forward to see what you got going on in the rest of 2024 into 2025, Adam. Adam, thanks for the time, and we'll hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks, brother.